guy in Kingston, Tom Coulter, that people say, well, he should just be a Republican. Well, not really.
His son is the state rep. Did I fall out of it, out of the camera? His son is a state rep, colleague of Dean Tran, counselor at large, and he's a Republican.
Got it.
America, we stand for freedom. Though freedom is never really free, we yearn and strive for government, protecting our liberty.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Your Right to Know, brought to you by the Fitchburg Republican City Committee. I'll be your host, Andrew Couture, and co-hosting with me is my friend, Mary Lotze, and we have a very special guest today, State Representative Geoff Diehl, State Rep from the Massachusetts 7th Plymouth District, and also a candidate for the U.S. Senate for Massachusetts. Welcome to the show, Geoff.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate you having me. Very great to see you.
It's very nice to have you.
Thank you.
And now, can you introduce yourselves to our viewers and tell us a bit about yourself, about your youth, your family, political background?
Sure. Well, let's see. I, as you mentioned, represent the 7th Plymouth District, which is the towns of Abington, Whitman, and East Bridgewater. And I live in the town of Whitman. And for those who don't know, Whitman is the home of the Toll House cookie. It was invented there. So that's
I like it already.
Exactly. It's a sweet place to live.
Oh.
Yes. And my wife grew up in Whitman, so it makes it even sweeter. I met her in New York City on a blind date back, I won't even say the date, but we've been happily married for 21 years. We met on a blind date, we're engaged 4 months later, and we're married a year after that in her hometown of Whitman. We're raising 2 daughters, they're 15 and 11, and we own a small business in the neighboring town of Hanson, Massachusetts. And in Hanson, that's where we have a performing arts school. It's named, my wife's last name was Boss before we got married, so it's called the Boss Academy of Performing Arts. And she teaches a couple hundred kids every year dance and acting and voice, and we've owned it for 15 years. I actually worked for a sign company out of New Bedford while she was doing that, and I worked at Poyant Signs, the largest sign company in New England, and I was able to, for almost a decade, work with small businesses around the state, helping them launch their business with their signage outside, listening to their hopes, their dreams of trying to start a business or grow a business. And I was able to work on a lot of great clients. One of the last projects I think I worked on was replacing all the neon tubing on the Citgo sign over Fenway Park.
Oh, nice.
With LED. So, you know, my work took me all over the state and met a lot of great people. And, you know, a funny thing about me, too, is that I was born back in 1969. Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, and he was an Eagle Scout. And so I joined scouting when I was a kid, and I always wanted to, you know, become an Eagle Scout. I earned my Eagle Scout when I was 16, and you know, I thought I'd have a boy someday, and I'd join a scout troop, and that'd be my way to kind of give back for everything that's been, you know, helped me in my life. You know, people that have picked me up and moved me along, whether it was college or whether it was in my career or now in politics, people who've helped me for, you know, trying to, you know, just be very good people, and I want to pay it forward. So I thought, oh, I'll have a boy, I'll join that scout troop, but 2 daughters that love ballet and hate camping, my chance to kind of give back took a different turn.
Welcome to the club. I have 2 daughters myself.
Oh, well, then you know.
I know exactly
no bathroom time whatsoever. But I joined the local finance committee in the town of Whitman. I thought that'd be a chance to kind of give back, and I became the liaison to the school board. And it was during that time that I saw that, you know, the Beacon Hill wasn't necessarily helping towns and cities the way that I thought they should. You know, we were having cuts to local aid. We were the Quinn bill was being pulled, which was falling on the shoulders of the town's finances. We weren't getting the Chapter 70 education funds that we were expecting, and at the same time, the guy who was the state rep for that district was voting to increase the sales tax to 6 1/4. He had voted for Sal DeMacy, who was under investigation as speaker. He had voted for that double tax on alcohol. I mean, he kind of was going the wrong direction for what I thought was, you know, good for Massachusetts. So I was on the finance committee, and I said to them, much like I'm sitting here now, I said, well, is anybody going to run against this gentleman?
Yeah.
And nobody said they would. And I was 40 years old at the time. I wasn't even involved with my Republican town committee. And I said, well, maybe I can run. And they said, well, sure, just join your Republican town committee. And so I read 2 books on how to run for office, literally. And I knocked on doors as much as I could for 2 years, 2009 and 2010. And I won a race that nobody expected me to win, because at the time, the Democratic Party chair lived in one of my towns, Abington, and Shannon O'Brien, who ran against Mitt Romney for governor, lives in my town of Whitman. And my opponent was from the 3rd town, and his father had been state rep and state senator before him. So nobody gave me any chance of winning, but you know, out there I was knocking on doors, talking to people about myself and what I thought was right. And I ended up winning that election in 2010. And I joined a lot of great people up on Beacon Hill, like Jim Lyons from Andover, and Mark Lombardo from Billerica, and Shauna O'Connell from Taunton. I mean, some great conservatives that came in, and you know, we doubled the number of Republicans in the House in 2010 from 16 to 32. And there was another guy that ran a special election in 2010 that won. That kind of helped everybody too. Scott Brown was the 41st vote against Obamacare, as we all remember, and won. You know, big surprise to everybody. He won that race. So you know, that was the year that I came in, and since I've been in office, I've been really proud to represent not just the interest of the 3 towns that I am elected for, but also really represent the interest of people across the state, whether it's trying to keep taxes low, trying to make sure that veterans get the benefits they deserve, or trying to make sure that illegal immigration doesn't continue to drain the money from our towns and cities. And by the way, you know, our Massachusetts budget is about $40 billion. Right now, we're spending about $1.8 billion each year on services that go towards people who are here illegally. And nobody's saying that we don't want immigrants to come to our state or to our country. All we're saying is that we want them to go through the process the right way, and you know, work, you know, not under the table, but you know, be able to earn a living, have retirement benefits when they retire as well. But at the same time, make sure that they're coming to our country for the right reasons, and again, not creating a drain on the financial resources that right now are so precious, because you know, our economy still hasn't really turned that corner yet.
Right.
Now, you've decided to make a huge leap. You've decided to run against Elizabeth Warren, and we completely support you. And what made you decide to leave your position? Because you're doing one heck of a job at the State House.
Yeah. We need more like you at the State House.
Exactly. But what made you decide to leave that position and go after Elizabeth Warren?
Well, it's a culmination of things, not the least of which I don't think Elizabeth Warren is, you know, in that Senate seat for the right reasons, and I'll get to that in a minute. But you know, some of the things that I've done up on Beacon Hill have led me to believe that, you know, we can win this race, and it's not just about, you know, me, the candidate. It's about the fact that I've worked with an incredible group of grassroots volunteers from across the state. That it's not just Republican issues or Democrat issues. It's issues that are for the household and pocketbook. And the most specific one, I think maybe some of the people watching know, was the ballot question in 2014 to repeal the index gas tax. It was question 1, and what had happened was Deval Patrick in 2013 had proposed the largest tax increase in the history of Massachusetts, $2 billion, okay? And part of that was this tech tax, which thankfully was repealed 6 weeks later because the Democrat supermajority in the House and Senate realized it was going to drive about 11% of our economy out of our state. Most of those technology companies, all they need to do is pull the plug and get Wi-Fi connection in another state, and they're out of here.
Sure.
Yeah.
But the other thing was the gas tax, where people didn't even know their gas tax had gone up 3 cents, let alone that it was indexed to go up every year automatically with inflation tied to the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, which, by the way, factors the cost of gas in it. So it's a failed formula, because as gas goes up, CPI goes up. But as CPI goes up, gas goes up. Terrible formula to begin with. It shouldn't have been adopted. But what we had to do was basically not just get a team together to work on the ballot question, but we had to inform people that their tax had gone up and why it was so bad for them. So the first step was to get it on the ballot, which was, we needed 67,000 signatures. And we had a press conference on the steps of the State House, and they said, there's no way that you're going to get these. The press kind of laughed at us. We said, we're doing it, and we're doing it with all volunteers. We ended up delivering 120,000 signatures thanks to so many people who just came out across the state. They listened to me on radio, and I was on TV, and we had people holding banners and signs talking about this question, and we said, you've got to fill out this signature thing and get as many people as you can to sign it. They were coming into town halls like crazy, and so we got 120,000 signatures. We made the ballot, and then we were told, well, the special interest folks have raised $3 million to defeat your question, and we ended up being outspent 31-1. I mean, we were only able to raise about $90,000 or so, and we were facing $3 million. But we convinced people because of two major factors. One is that there's no other tax in Massachusetts that goes up, that would have gone up automatically without a vote, only this gas tax. And we are the state of no taxation without representation. And this would have basically given the Department of Transportation a blank check every single year without any accountability for where that money was going to go. And the other thing we convinced them too was that the gas tax is regressive in that it hits middle to low income families the most. It's not just what you pump into your car, but all the goods you purchase are the cost increases because of the transportation.
It's added on to everything.
And municipalities aren't exempt from the gas tax. So every police car, every fire truck, every ambulance, every school bus, all the cost of that gas would have been pumped into your property tax increases, and so it would have hit everybody in at least three different ways. So we convinced folks, and we ended up winning that ballot question 53-47. We even outperformed Governor Charlie Baker by 50,000 votes. He had won his race by 40,000 votes. We ended up outperforming him by 50,000. So again, it showed that it wasn't a partisan issue. It was purely what was good for the people of Massachusetts.
And thank God you did it. I have to say.
We saved the Boston Globe blamed us for $2 billion in lost money for transportation. I like to say that we saved taxpayers $2 billion, because the other thing too was that we show that Massachusetts spends 4 times the national average on road maintenance.
Yes.
We spend $675,000 per year, per mile, exactly, to maintain our roads versus the national average of $145,000. So it was really outrageous. So that was one thing that really woke me up to the fact that there are people across the state, if it's the right issue or the right candidate, like Scott Brown when he was the 41st vote against Obamacare, which by the way hasn't saved any family any money on health care, it's gone the other way, that this state will vote pragmatically in their self-interest. They even voted, again for Charlie Baker when he made the case that he would be a better manager for state services. So they will vote Republican, and they'll vote on issues that they'll even repeal a tax in Taxachusetts, So that kind of woke me up to the fact that I think there's a chance to win this race against Elizabeth Warren. The other thing too is I was lucky enough to be the co-chair for the Trump campaign, and especially telling was the primary where he won the state with 20,000 Democrats unenrolling and converting to Republican to vote for Donald Trump in that primary. That's according to Bill Galvin, a Democrat who's the Secretary of State. He verified that number. 20,000 Democrats. And Donald Trump didn't win Massachusetts in the general, but he did win 1,088,000 votes. And that's more than Charlie Baker won as governor. So if you look at it, there are people out there that want Washington, D.C. to start working again, and they're willing to cross party lines or vote the person and not necessarily the party that's going to get things done. And Elizabeth Warren is clearly trying to block everything that the president's trying to do. She's voted against every single nominee for his cabinet, even as recently as 2 weeks ago voted against the FBI director in the Senate confirmation hearings, even though he received an overwhelming bipartisan vote. There was only 5 votes against him, and one of them was Elizabeth Warren. And by the way, Elizabeth Warren has no track record of delivering anything for the state of Massachusetts to benefit us financially since she's been in office for 4.5 years. And in fact, one of the key votes she voted against was a bill called the 21st Century Cures Act. That bill was actually signed by President Obama. It included Joe Biden, the vice president's cancer moonshot funding for research into curing terminal illnesses. And just 2 months ago, Massachusetts received $12 million to fight the opioid crisis from that 21st Century Cures Act. She was the only Democrat of all 11 congressional members. There's 9 congressmen and women and 2 senators. She was the only Democrat to vote against that You know, and grandstanding, maybe to raise her profile, some people may appreciate that. I don't think anybody in Massachusetts appreciated that vote, and I've yet to hear her explain herself on why she would vote against something that is trying to cure terminal illnesses. And by the way, Massachusetts research hospitals benefit from that increased research funding. We've got some of the best research hospitals in the world. So it's also voting against jobs. Elizabeth Warren has been about one thing. Elizabeth Warren, she's been a part-time senator. She's been a part-time author because she's written 2 books while she's in office. She's made $1.6 million for herself while writing those books. And she seems to be a part-time candidate for president in 2020. She wants to be reelected, in 2018, it seems to me, so she can spend 2 more years running for president and trying to, defeat Donald Trump.
Well, a couple of months ago, BUR conducted a poll trying to assess Elizabeth Warren's popularity as our U.S. Senator from Massachusetts. Her approval ratings were well below 50%. The numbers show that she has vulnerabilities in terms of re-election. Do you believe that she's vulnerable?
Absolutely. I mean, that BUR poll, like you said, it showed that more people would actually rather see a different senator than her, which is unbelievable. If you're a progressive liberal Democrat in Massachusetts, you'd think that you'd be a lock for, that radio station, by the way, is an NPR affiliate on the campus of BU. That is not any conservative talk show station putting those numbers out there. But, let's look at some of the things that Elizabeth Warren's done while she's gone on that book tour, for example. She went on a morning talk show and said that anybody who didn't agree with her and voted for the president was part of an, quote, ugly stew of racists. Okay, she went to the NAACP dinner a few months ago and said that it's law enforcement that continues to terrorize, the African American community. She said that when the Republicans were taking up health care, that what they were trying to do was extract blood money from the people of the country. Okay, that when she said that was right at the time that Congressman Scalise was shot in the hip by that sniper, that Bernie Sanders shooter, who had shot them. They were practicing playing baseball.
Yes.
And she said, she talks about blood money, and when you've got people out there right now in this environment that are very angry, and there's these protest things happening now, and she's just fueling this division, pitting people against minorities against law enforcement, Republicans against Democrats, and at the same time too, she's complaining that small businesses only pay women, they don't pay women in equality in the workplace. And we found out just this last April that she's paying women in her office, her Senate office, 71 cents on the dollar, right? So she's trying to, pit gender against gender. For her, the more she complains and points fingers and yells at people, the more she's just trying to fundraise and get her profile up. I don't know if you remember this, but Kid Rock about a month or so ago said that he may run for U.S. Senate in Michigan. On August 4th, she had said that she's focused on Massachusetts, she's working for us all the time. And then she ends up putting out a fundraising email about trying to stop Kid Rock in Michigan. Could you please try to focus on the state you said you were going to work in? But she's traveled around the country, to Tennessee, she's traveled to Michigan, to California several times, to Georgia, to New York City for these talk show things. She's more interested in raising her profile and raising all her fundraising for herself than she is trying to deliver for the people of Massachusetts. And to anybody watching who perhaps was a fan of Ted Kennedy, he certainly was no friend of Republicans. He was called the liberal lion of the Senate. But when elections were over, he knew it was time to work with Republican presidents or Republican governors to deliver for the people of Massachusetts. She has no intention of doing anything like that.
No, her disdain for President Trump and everything Republican is overwhelming to what's good for the people. There's no doubt about that.
States like Michigan, states like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania that had traditionally been voting Democrat for years voted for the president because they saw him as someone who understood that there's a lot of people suffering out there. There's a lot of people that are dealing with unemployment or underemployment. There's a lot of people who are frustrated that companies are leaving our country. A lot of people who are veterans coming back and not getting the health services they need from the VA hospital. She doesn't seem to understand that this resist movement is wrong. We should be assisting the American people and the people of Massachusetts. And she clearly...
It should be the assist movement, not the resist movement.
Exactly.
Well, there are many Democrats out there who are concerned that the Democratic Party has gone way too far left. They are perhaps best known as the Kennedy Democrats, or as I like to call them in a more modern day, Trumpocrats. But they just don't recognize or support the new Democrat who is clearly represented by Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, the far left. Chuck Schumer is another one. Nancy Pelosi is another one in the U.S. House of Representatives wing of the party. Do you believe that the Democratic Party is in political disarray between the very liberal ultra-left Elizabeth Warren and the more centralists?
That's actually probably one of the best ways to put it, is there is disarray nationally. Even in Massachusetts, I think there's no ideological leader that's trying to help them sort of figure out what their message is, and their message should be, let's help the American people first, not this ideology of moving to the extreme left. And if you think about it, right, Elizabeth Warren ended up endorsing Hillary Clinton in the primary in Massachusetts, even though she believes in single-payer health care. She believes in free college tuition for everybody. She's for open borders and sanctuary cities. She's the Bernie Sanders wing of the party, and yet she's hypocritical in that she endorsed Hillary Clinton for the election. So I think that also factors into some of that discontent by people in Massachusetts, the Democrats, in that WBUR poll. But if you think about that party, right now, they are not condemning the actions of these groups like Antifa that have stifled free speech out in Berkeley, set fires and kept people from speaking at Berkeley. The Antifa that showed up in Massachusetts on the Boston Common and basically shut down a free speech rally.
Horrendous.
And they threw urine on police officers and rocks, dragged a woman with an American flag down. Where is the condemnation by Elizabeth Warren and the Democrats in Massachusetts for this? And let me also remind you, the day after Donald Trump was inaugurated, Madonna spoke right there in Washington, D.C. about blowing up the White House. Did any Democrat condemn that? And yet, they're the ones saying that, our president hasn't condemned hate groups. He's condemned them time and time again. Decades ago, he's condemned the KKK and the Nazis and all that. The fact of the matter is, this is, another attempt to divert people from the real truth, and that is that the Republicans and the president right now are trying to put America back on track, and for them, politics is more important than the people. And Elizabeth Warren is the face of that movement right now, of moving to the far left and trying to kill the American agenda.
Let me just ask you, Geoff, it appears now that as you run for Senate, you're going to have to face a primary challenge. There's at least two people who have already also put their name into the ring. A woman just recently, Beth Lindstrom. I think she's from Groton, which is close to us here. And then Dr. Shiva Araduri and I know there's another gentleman. Do you think that primary races are good for a candidate, or do you think it's just extra money that has to be spent fighting your own party, within your own party, and it doesn't do anything to promote the candidate who comes out?
Well, Mary, I think primaries are fine. It's a good chance to make sure that the candidate that you put forward has been answerable to the group that wants to make him the candidate. So to me, that's fine. I'm happy to put the accomplishments I've achieved up on Beacon Hill up against anybody in this race. I'm the only candidate that has saved taxpayers' money, put money back in their wallets, while other people have been, putting money into their own pockets. Yeah. And I would say that, if you looked at, Jeb Bush, and in the primary, everybody thought that he had the deep pockets, all that money, and that he would be the presumptive, maybe one of the presumptive nominees to run for the presidency. That didn't work out. You looked at Hillary Clinton; she had all the money in the world. And so for me, we're doing a good job of fundraising, but this isn't going to be a primary where I'm relying on a lot of cash being there. Maybe other candidates will be. I'm looking at the fact that I've always been trying to represent that grassroots team that's been able to deliver victories across the state. I almost feel that, to me, this is an obligation to run for the United States Senate so that they can have a candidate they know has been there for them as they've been there to help me on the issues that I've always felt important, or the candidates I've felt important. Again, that gas tax was a great win. I ended up being able to put a ballot question together and had filed basically legislation to prevent the Olympics from coming to Massachusetts because that was going to be a $10 billion boondoggle.
Somebody who drives in and out of Boston every day, thank you so much.
No, and you know what? The fact is that by just getting that ballot question together and a team ready again, we were able to defeat them because they said, you know what, forget this.
They saw it coming.
They saw that the people were going to speak again. So for me, the obligation to make sure that I am the best candidate to represent the people of this state who have put their trust in me on key issues and the like is really the reason that I'm so passionate about trying to win this primary and win this race against Elizabeth Warren.
I'd like you to talk about some of your conservative values, your conservative side, because you're probably ultimately going to be the more conservative of the Republicans, and definitely when you win the primary for the Republican Party and you go and face off against Elizabeth Warren, you definitely will be the more conservative of the two candidates. But I'd just like to also say that I was out in the malls with the gas tax.
Yes, thank you.
And I just want to share that we had all the posters and everything up, and people were kind of walking by. It was nice weather, and people were walking by not paying much attention. But all of a sudden we started asking people, do you drive? And once we got the answer yes, we'd ask them about the taxes.
Get right in there.
Where do I sign? Where do I sign?
Well, I've been fortunate enough to, again, be elected not just the first time as state representative and win my second election, but I've been unopposed the last two times I've run for state representative because people in my district understand that I've been working for them.
Well, and then let me point out another for our viewers, because another area you've saved money for the taxpayers, and this is an area in Massachusetts that has caused a lot of angst among the voters, and that's the
pay raises
for the legislatures.
That was insanity.
And I know there was no activity against it, but you did not support it, you did not vote for it and all. So I'd like that was another area you saved taxpayers'
money.
money.
Talk about conservatism, I've signed the No New Tax Pledge here in Massachusetts, and I think that's important. There's a lot of places where we could curtail spending on Beacon Hill, and I think down in Washington we can even do a better job of redirecting the money that people make. We have taken in record taxes, we don't need it. But in Massachusetts, what's so frustrating is we've had historically a sales tax holiday weekend. Mm-hmm. And that's given businesses that need a little jump start in August a chance to get more customers in. The legislature now for 2 years in a row hasn't passed it. The cost of that, and I say cost is not the right term, but the value of that is about $20 million. Now, the legislature just voted at the beginning of this session to give themselves $18 million worth of pay raises so that legislators who are, for example, chairmen of committees and all that, and end up getting $30,000 stipends to be chairs of committee. And by the way, that's all Democrats because it's a supermajority in the House and Senate. And so, I was one of the ones that voted against that. I am donating back the increase that they gave to the average rank and file for stipends. Sure. I've already given away $2,000 of that. I'm going to continue to donate back that money. We shouldn't have had it. I voted against it. Nobody probably looking at this show right now has had a raise of 40 to 60%, and yet the legislators gave themselves a massive pay raise on your backs, even though right now your household incomes, I'm guessing, are pretty stagnant. So that's wrong. I've always been willing to stand up for that, and that's what I want to continue to do in Washington.
Believe it or not, our show is over.
No.
It's been 30 minutes already.
I do have a website people need to go to,
please,
though, if that's okay.
Tell our viewers, absolutely, because we have a little campaign sticker here that I would like everyone to see.
They can get a free one of those, at Diehlforsenate.com, DIEHL Senate.com. You can click a button to get that for free, get a lawn sign sent to you for free. I know you both are veterans of campaigns. Lawn signs are important. And you can click to volunteer. You can click to donate. So Diehl for Senate, we have a Facebook page. Geoff Diehl on Facebook, Geoff Diehl for Senate, and on Twitter, Diehl for Senate. So those ways you can kind of get on social media, see where I've been, where I'm going, all that sort of thing. We have a Facebook page and Twitter page called Where's Warren, because she's been out of state so much.
Where's Waldo?
That you can. It's exactly. Where's the beef? You can track, what she's been up to, because we also want to let people know that she's not doing the job that she was, expected to do as U.S. Senator. And that's why hopefully people will be behind me. I thank you guys for your support and having me on here. And this is going to be a campaign where I think we can prove that Massachusetts is ready to vote for someone who will work for them. So I'm so thankful for you having me on the show.
Thank you for coming.
It is our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary.
We thank you for watching Your Right to Know and sitting in with the FRCC. As we leave you, we want you to remember that your local city or town Republican committee is your only grassroots organization that supports and holds dear your rights, your liberties, and your constitutional values. We encourage you to join us. Why? Because to us, GOP stands for growth, opportunity, and prosperity for all people, and because we always stand for freedom. Thank you and good night.
America, we stand for freedom. So let us all unite to yearn and strive for our republic that reflects our values, that preserves our rights, and goes forth in power and might, that reflects our values and preserves our rights, and goes forth in power and might.